In this video, I'm gonna be going over what Blend If is within Photoshop. I'm also gonna go over how to use it and a few practical applications for it. Now, Blend If is a bit of a weird tool. It's not very well known and a lot of photographers don't use it very often. Personally, I don't use it very much either, but I did want to demonstrate how to use it because it does have a few specialized uses that can be helpful in your process. So let's go ahead and start from the top. What is Blend If? Now, in order to understand Blend If, you first have to understand what tonal values are. Now, tonal values are essentially darkness to lightness. They're typically measured on a scale from 0 to 255, meaning 0 is pure black, 255 is pure white, and everything in the middle is some form of gray on that entire spectrum. Now, let me go ahead and show you where Blend If is within Photoshop before we get a little bit deeper into how it actually works. So, hop into Photoshop here. We got this lovely image in Mexico taken up here that I'm going to demonstrate on. And to access Blend If, you simply double click on the layer in this blank spot here. And it's going to pull up the layer style menu, and the Blend If department is right here. So this is all we're going to be working with in this video here. Another way to access Blend If is to select the layer you want to work with, go to FX and click blending options here, and it will go ahead and pop up the menu here. So one thing to note is we're only going to be working with this underlying layer bar here. This layer bar here is a little bit more complicated. It's confusing to most people, and honestly, it doesn't have really any practical uses at all. So just completely ignore that bar for this tutorial. We're only going to be using this underlying layer bar here. The first thing you're going to want to do is make sure this is also set to gray here. So let's go ahead and show you an example of how this works. So let's go ahead and start with a saturation adjustment here. So we'll just go ahead and adjust the saturation for this entire image here. Now, if I want to use Blend If, I simply double click here, pull this up, and now this underlying layer is what we're going to be using. So the easiest way to understand this is that everything between these two sliders here, which as you can see, you can adjust, is where that adjustment, the saturation adjustment here, is going to apply. So since it's now, the sliders are both on each side from 0 to 255, it's applying the saturation adjustment to the entire image. But if I were to slide this way, it's now only going to apply that saturation to pixels that are this level of brightness. So it's not going to apply saturation to any of the darker pixels in this image. And the same with the reverse here. So if I slide this way, let's go ahead and drop this down so you can see it happening in action. So now, as you can see, as we slide this down, it's slowly moving to the right here, and now it's only applying saturation to these darker pixels here, which are illustrated in this cloud up here. So I'll go through and run that again. You can see slowly now how we are adjusting that right there. So essentially, at the end of the day, that's the very basics of Blend If. And if you want to think of it like something, it's almost like a mask. It's almost like a luminosity mask, actually, within a certain layer. It's like a hidden mask, if you will. So one more thing I did want to point out is that you can also break these sliders in half here if you simply click the Alt button. So now I can slide it like this, and now it's going to blend that saturation a bit more smoothly along these edges here. See, as you can see, if it's solid like this, we're getting a very solid line up here of where this is happening in those tonal values because it's not transitioning. So if we hold the Alt button again, you could see, let's do that again. You could see now it's going to make that transition a bit smoother and make it not nearly as abrupt. So you can then go ahead and click OK, and that's essentially it. You'll see this little icon here that demonstrates that you've used a layer style on it. Now, another thing you can do is you can go back to this at any time. And if you want to see specifically where your adjustments are being made, one trick I have is you can click the color overlay style here, and I have purple selected. And now it's going to show me that it's only going to affect the saturation in the areas where there is purple color. So I can go ahead and adjust this and say now it's only going to adjust saturation where that purple is in the image. So if you click OK there, you can see it creates a little thing down here that you could turn on and off. So this allows you to really see exactly where that adjustment or where that blend if is taking place in the image if you want a little bit of extra assistance in that realm. So one of the fancy things about blend if that makes it stand out as opposed to using a luminosity mask is that they are dynamic and they will constantly change with what's below that layer. So with a luminosity mask, once you create it, you only have a mask that's adjusted and will stay fixed. So if you make any adjustments down here, then you're stuck with that luminosity mask and you'll have to either redo it or edit the mask manually. Here, if I were to, let's turn this color overlay off, go ahead and create a brightness contrast layer below this and up the brightness of the entire image, all of these values here are going to still be saved and it's going to automatically apply them still to the pixels between these two sliders here. So even though I brightened everything, it's still going to keep that settings that we wanted and we don't have to go back and adjust it again. So that's one way it's helpful. It's also helpful because it doesn't create nearly as big of a save file. Blend if is a very safe way to use it, whereas the luminosity mask can get a bit more layer intensive and create a bigger save file. So that's an overview of blend if. So now I want to get into a bit more practical applications for how to use blend if besides for adjustments. Well, actually, I do want to show you one more adjustment you might want to use it for. So let's go ahead and swap over to this image here. This was taken at the Cholla Cactus Garden in Joshua Tree, actually. So you can use it for dodging and burning, which is helpful. So say I want to increase the brightness of these darker patches here because they're a bit too black for me. So I can go through and create a brightness contrast adjustment, up that brightness, and now it's applying to everything. But now I can go into blend if now and make it only apply that brightness to these darker parts of the image here. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth it out like that so we get a bit more of a better transition here. So let's click OK there and see the difference. Very subtle. Let's increase this brightness a little bit more so you can see a bit more what's going on. See, so now we're getting a bit more brightness in these areas down here, and it doesn't look nearly as dark and pull your eyes down there. So that's one way you can use it for dodging and burning for very specific colors. Another reason you can use it is for denoising. Now, I know this entire course I've always done denoising in Lightroom where I have access to the raw files and you'll get a more accurate denoise. But say you already did that or you forgot to do it and you want to do some additional denoising in Photoshop, you can go ahead and use this tool to make that happen. So let's go ahead and delete this layer here. And we'll go ahead and duplicate this layer and rename this to denoise. We'll go ahead and go to filter and noise and apply a reduce noise filter here. So we got some pretty good settings already previewed in here. So we'll click OK there. So now we have that denoise, but it's doing that denoising to the entire image. So if I want to apply it only to the darker parts of this image, I could double click. And in the same way we did that before, just set this so it's only going to denoise in the tonal values that are darker here. So let's go ahead and split this to make it smooth, more smoothly of a transition. Oops, don't want to split that black one like that. Click OK. And now we're getting denoising only in the darker parts of the image. So that's how the denoising application can work. You can also use this for sharpening parts of the image. So basically the opposite of denoise. So let's go ahead and create a duplicate of this bottom layer here and name this one to sharpen. We'll go ahead and send this up to the top here. And we'll go ahead and apply a filter to this. Let's go ahead and do Smart Sharpen. And I already have this pretty optimized for a good amount of sharpness. We really want to get these cacti a bit sharper. As you can see, they're a bit soft in this image here. So I think this is a good setting there. We'll click OK. And now, double click on this. And now I will apply the sharpening only to the lighter spots of the image. So now it's only going to sharpen in these lighter tonal pixels, which are all of these edges that are nice and lit up. So if we turn that on off, you can see it's very subtly now sharpening those cactuses and making them look a bit more intense. Another great thing about this tool is you can use it on smart objects as well. I know in this tutorial I haven't used smart objects for these filters, but you can use it for smart objects if you want to go through and adjust that noise or that sharpen again in the future. So that's everything you need to know about BlendIf. A very simple tool, but it can yield some very powerful results if you know how to use it correctly. Now, like I said, I don't use it all the time, but if you can find a way to incorporate it into your workflow or for that one-off photo where you have a very specific use, then awesome. Let's go ahead and hop into the next video.